She seemed like the perfect daughter, quiet, respectful, and deeply religious. But behind the closed doors of her Illinois home, something far darker was brewing. In a case that left an entire community stunned, 35-year-old Virginia McCullough confessed to a horrifying double murder, the killing of her elderly parents, John and Lois McCullough. Why would a daughter take the lives of the very people who raised her? What secrets were hidden behind their suburban walls? And how did a carefully buried crime finally unravel after more than 2 years? Background: who were John and Lois McCullough? John and Lois McCullough were longtime residents of Crete, Illinois, a quiet suburban town just south of Chicago. John, 70, was a retired insurance executive who was known for his warm demeanor and involvement in community affairs. Lois, 67, was a homemaker with a gentle nature, always quick to lend a hand or offer a kind word to her neighbors. The couple had been married for decades and were described as loving, devout, and dedicated to their family. They were deeply religious and raised their children with strong Christian values. Their lives were centered around church, family, and quiet routines. To those around them, the McCulloughs seemed to embody the ideals of a stable, peaceful American family. But as authorities would later learn, appearances can be deeply misleading. John and Lois lived with their adult daughter, Virginia, who had returned home after struggling to find independence. Their home, once filled with warmth and tradition, would later become the scene of an unspeakable tragedy. Friends and family were left grappling with one question: how did a loving home turn into a silent grave? Virginia McCullough, the quiet daughter with a hidden darkness. Virginia McCullough was known as a quiet, soft-spoken woman who rarely caused trouble. At 35, she was unmarried, unemployed, and still living with her parents. Those who knew her described her as polite but deeply introverted. She had no criminal record, no history of violence, and no apparent signs of mental illness. But beneath her calm surface, something deeply troubling was growing. Reports later revealed that Virginia had become increasingly isolated. She rarely left the house, had no close friends, and seemed emotionally dependent on her parents. Some described her as having childlike behavior and an intense fear of being alone. The stress of living under constant supervision and failing to build a life of her own may have created a slow-burning psychological crisis. Still, no one could have imagined the outcome. There were no warning signs of violence, no police calls, no public arguments, no threats. But in August 2019, the horror she had kept hidden finally surfaced in a confession that shocked even seasoned investigators. The murders: how and when did it happen? According to court documents and Virginia's own confession, the murders took place sometime in August 2019. But what makes this case even more chilling is that for years, no one knew the McCulloughs were dead. Virginia had carefully covered up the crime, telling neighbors and family that her parents had moved to another state for health reasons. She allegedly shot her parents in the head with a firearm inside their own home. Investigators say the killings appeared premeditated, but Virginia has not given a clear motive. After the murders, she wrapped their bodies in blankets and stored them inside a home freezer in the garage. For over 2 years, their remains were hidden in plain sight while she continued living her daily life. Virginia maintained the illusion by responding to emails, sending holiday cards, and even pretending to talk to her parents on the phone in front of relatives. The level of deception was so convincing that it delayed discovery of the crime until a concerned family member alerted authorities in October 2023. The discovery: what led to her arrest? The truth began to unravel in late 2023, when a relative grew suspicious after not hearing from John and Lois for a long time. Despite Virginia's efforts to pretend that her parents had relocated, there were inconsistencies. Mail had piled up at the house. No medical records could confirm the supposed move. And then, the most alarming detail: no one had physically seen the McCulloughs in years. That's when a wellness check was requested by local authorities. Police visited the McCullough home and found Virginia alone. Initially evasive, she finally broke down and led them to the garage freezer. There, beneath layers of blankets and ice, they discovered the frozen remains of her parents. The discovery sent shockwaves across the nation. Virginia was immediately arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, concealment of a homicide, and unlawful use of a weapon. Her confession was as calm as it was horrifying, cold, calculated, and without remorse. The motive. Why did she do it? To this day, Virginia McCullough has not provided a clear, coherent motive for the killings. Investigators believe a combination of mental health issues, emotional dependency, and a desire for control may have played a role. Prosecutors have hinted that financial pressure and resentment toward her parents could have been underlying factors. Some psychological experts who reviewed the case suggest that Virginia may have been experiencing a rare form of dependent personality disorder or delusional thinking, making her feel trapped in her situation with no way out. Instead of seeking help or moving away, she made an unthinkable choice: to eliminate the very people who cared for her. Still, the case raises more questions than answers. Was Virginia mentally ill? Was she a master manipulator? Or was she simply overwhelmed by years of internal struggle? Whatever the truth, her silence has only deepened the mystery behind the crime. Legal proceedings and public reaction. As of now, Virginia McCullough remains in custody, awaiting trial for the murders of her elderly parents, John and Lois McCullough. Her legal team has filed motions requesting comprehensive psychological evaluations to assess her mental state at the time of the crime and her current competency to stand trial. Prosecutors, on the other hand, are preparing to argue that the murders were cold, calculated, and premeditated. The fact that the victims' remains were found dismembered and stored inside plastic containers only adds to the gravity of the allegations. If convicted, Virginia could face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, a sentence that underscores the severity of her actions. The public response to the case has been one of shock, confusion, and deep sorrow. Neighbors and acquaintances describe Virginia as quiet and private, with no outward signs of violence or instability. The gruesome nature of the crime and the revelation that the victims may have been dead for months before discovery left many struggling to reconcile the image of a seemingly normal woman with the horror unfolding in the headlines. News outlets across the country picked up the story, prompting heated online debates and sparking speculation about her motives, her mental state, and whether there were any warning signs that had been missed. Beyond the criminal proceedings, the case has sparked larger conversations about overlooked issues in society. People are asking tough questions. How does elder abuse go unnoticed for so long? What role does mental illness play in family violence? And how can adult children, often stretched thin by financial pressures and caregiving responsibilities, be better supported before they reach a breaking point? Virginia McCullough's case has become more than a criminal trial. It has become a mirror held up to the darker corners of family life, mental health systems, and a society that often turns away until it's too late. John and Lois McCullough gave everything to their daughter: love, stability, and a home. In return, they met a tragic end at the hands of the very person they raised. The question that still haunts everyone is simple: why? And how could no one have seen it coming? This isn't just a story about murder. It's a story about silence, about warning signs ignored, and about a system that failed to intervene. Virginia McCullough's actions shattered a family and shocked a nation. But perhaps by telling their story, we can better understand the quiet dangers that can grow behind closed doors. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stories like these deserve to be told, so that justice isn't just served but remembered.